The man in the boat laughed. I feel very brave, Yassi. You are very brave. The rats. My balls are gone.
This is I Don't Even Own a Television, Anne Bishop's Daughter of Blood.
1, 2, 3. There are books that are good, there are books that are bad. There's some books so fucking awful you wish you never had read them at all. 'Cause a novel can ruin your life. Hey buddy, I don't even own a television.
Hey everybody, it's Jay. Before we get things rolling, I wanted to mention, I noticed while editing, we have a content warning on this episode, but I feel like it got a little bit buried a little late into the show. So right up front, I do just want to warn you that this is a dark gothic fantasy novel, which is obviously inspired by Anne Rice and includes a lot of the same awful tropes like graphic descriptions of rape, the sexualization of children, child abuse, etc., etc. So please consider yourself forewarned, and if you want to skip it, that's fine. Otherwise, here's the episode. All right, welcome to I Don't Even Own a Television. It's a podcast about bad books, the worst books. I am J.W. Friedman.
I'm Chris Collision, but you can call me Blood Moon Soleil.
And with us this time around, we have a very special guest, one of the hosts of How To Wrestling, Joe Graham.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, even though I have been made to read this absolute garbage water of a book.
Yeah, so right off the bat, as we sometimes have to do, we would like to apologize to you for making you read this.
Thank you.
Normally, and we will be sending you money for your copy soon because we just found out you paid for this, which makes it somehow even worse. Collision, what happened? How did we end up reading this book?
So Joe had a piece that she thought looked really good, and I think we looked at it and also thought it looked really good, but then we took a second look and realized, oh, holy heck, that's way, way, way too long. And then somebody who had been following the conversation was like, oh, you should do this instead. It's just as grimdark, edgy bullshit, but it's way, way shorter. And we landed on this, and whoever you were on Twitter, from hell's heart, I at thee.
Yes, so we landed on Daughter of Blood by Anne Bishop. I believe this is the first in a long-running series called what? The Blood Jewels?
Yeah, the Black Jewels.
Ah, okay. I was way off.
Before we jump in, I do want to say that a strongest possible content warning does apply to this book. It is exclusively about the sexualization of children. That is the entire subject matter of this book. And if that makes you uncomfortable, there's just no interacting with this book that's not going to make you uncomfortable.
Yeah, like if you don't want to read Anne Rice, then don't listen to this episode. And, that's pretty much the long and short of it. Yeah. I mean, most people don't want to read Anne Rice, but for, various reasons. Yeah, so this is a book that is 375 pages long, I guess.
And jam-packed.
Yeah, it felt like an eternity. It's about, devils and witches and stuff. And the whole thing
now
is...
Now that's a simplification. It's about devils.
It's just a blur in my mind. It's a blur of magic with a K.
You've already repressed this book.
Well, it sounds like, Joe, you have a tremendous handle on the world and the events of this book. Would you like to step up and walk us through it? Be our guide into the dark realms?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, I'd be happy to, really. As an expert of Daughter of the Blood, I'm really not, but I have taken extensive notes on this, and I even did a bit of research, patting myself on the back. Thank you.
And you have the most authoritative voice, I think, to speak on these matters.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll roll with it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to do a quick rundown over the entire book, spoiler-free or non-spoiler-free, whichever you prefer.
I massively prefer non-spoiler-free, because if anybody takes anything away from listening to this episode, I hope it's the following. Under no circumstances, read this book.
Yeah, do not read this book. Actually, before we even get into the summary, I just want to say, we usually don't announce the books we're reading ahead of time because we don't want people to read them. I posted that little excerpt about the rats, my balls are gone, and like 10 people replied on Twitter and were like, I know what book you're reading. Yeah. And my response to that is, what the hell, people? So
It's iconic.
yeah, I guess so. Oh, but yeah. So Joe,
So we like to kick things off if we can with preferably the guest trying to deliver the plot of this book in but 1 minute's time.
Okay.
and to be fair, I don't think we've hit 60 seconds in the past 3 months. So if you go over, we'll be flexible.
Yeah, like-
But we do like to play a song, so here it is.
Nobody knows if you finish or not. You got 60 seconds to give them a plot. Plot in 60 seconds.
Okay, so Joe,
Yes.
are you ready to take on the challenge of trying to summarize this twisted trip through the nethers of something or other? I don't know. I can't think of a clever way to say it.
This book sent me to the Twisted Kingdom for sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, same. It broke my tangled webs.
There we go. So, if you are prepared to try to summarize this in 60 seconds or less, please begin now.
So, Daughter of the Blood is about a world wherein the power structure is decided by different coloured jewels that are given to you either during something called a birthright ceremony, which is very mysterious and no one knows what it is, or a virgin night ceremony, which is basically an extensive rape of a person in order to either break them forever and ruin them as a person who exists, removing them of all their magical powers and any joy in life, or it makes them super, super powerful. There is a rumour, a myth, that there exists a being called a witch, and that someday she will return to the kingdoms and properly rule over everyone as is right in this world. There exist a few different characters, all with silly names. We've got Demon. Demon is some kind of demon.
10 out of 10 so far.
He's very sexy. He is the son of Satan, who is the Lord of High Hell, and he is also sexy.
But he's like old man walking with a cane sexy.
Yeah, but he's still...
Right.
They're very particular about this. He's definitely still sexy. He's still got it.
Yeah.
Page 78, and I quote, Satan could get it.
Yes! Satan has another son called Lucifer. Yep.
Clever.
He is also some kind of demon, and he's got big leathery wings. Both sons, Lucifer and Demon, wear something called a ring of obedience, which is basically a ring around their penis, which means that other people can control them by giving them large amounts of pain. It's basically hell on earth for any normal man.
Yeah, in my notes I have magical cock ring on the first page, so yep, that's
Magical
what it
hell
is.
cock ring.
yeah.
Now, everyone knows that someday Witch will return to the kingdoms, and at some point, a 7-year-old girl appears in everyone's brains, and everyone realizes that this is Witch, the chosen woman who's come to lead everyone to a better tomorrow. She has some lessons with some people. I'm trying to cut this real short now. I'm going to skip right over some middle sections. Skip to the end. She's kind of has a really bad time of it. I'm trying to be spoiler-free here. But she's learned some lessons, and she's going to try and fight back against the people who are doing these terrible things to her. And I think that's as much as I can say now without actually spoiling things.
You could spoil it.
Spoil it.
Yeah. We don't
I'm
want
gonna go
people
for
to
it.
read this.
Okay, all right. So ends basically with her trapped in her own mind from being raped so much. Is that accurate, would you say, guys?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's very accurate. And, like, I just wanted to say, right up front, you know, on the show a lot, there's a running joke, I'd say, amongst our fan base that I get very embarrassed when we talk about books that have sex in them. And I like to make little jokes and play it up and be like, haha, yeah, guys, that's not true. I've done the sex. The truth is, this book does make me feel very embarrassed and very uncomfortable, and I'm not exaggerating or playing it up for comic value at all. Like, it's I guess technically a type of erotica that some people may find titillating. For me, it felt like when I was in my 20s and I walked in on my roommate who was watching anime porn.
No!
Like, yeah, this whole thing, just like, I can't even think about this book without turning beet red. It's horrible.
Yeah, I basically I read the whole book with my legs crossed 4 times over.
Yeah, exactly.
Deeply uncomfortable.
I also have a hard copy of this, as do you, but I got it from Interlibrary Loan, and since the scheduling of this episode was a little higgledy-piggledy, I got it from Interlibrary Loan 2 separate times.
Oh, wow.
And read the bulk of it in public and had to carry it around for a week because I'm what's called a slow reader.
So somebody at that library is really, really afraid of you now.
I am now on a watch list, and that's fair because I've read this, and there's no turning back. Let's branch out from just the story, though. Let's talk about the rich, velvety world of Daughter of the Blood for a second.
It's very confusing.
It's very confusing. There's, I want to say, maybe 2.5 to 3 things about it. First, if you've read any of the Gore books, as Jay and I tragically have, those are books about a magical Conan the Barbarian sword and sorcery world where all men are in charge and all women are slaves, more particularly sex slaves. This is a cunning inversion of that, where it's a magical world where the power structure, the political structure, is exclusively female run. But this is not exactly... Aha! But it's not exactly woo girl power.
Wait.
Because all the women in this book are evil as shit. But this isn't quite an alt-righty edgelord book either, because all the men in this book are also evil as shit.
Just like everyone is a rapist in this book.
Exactly. And
Everybody is detestable and horrible.
yeah. Everybody is cruel, and everybody has sort of a good but also evil heart. And I hated this book a lot, guys. Yeah. I sort of like it a little bit as an exercise in reversing genre tropes, but I don't see why you have to hold my head in the toilet while you're reversing the genre tropes.
Not only holding your head in the toilet, but also like kind of riding you like a horsey at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit, before we move on. Yeah. I want to talk about the names in this book. Because there's an amazing juxtaposition here of like base level, like I changed one letter in Lucifer and now or I guess 2, and now it's Lucifer, or there's Satan but with an E in it, so it almost looks like the meat substitute.
Yeah.
But then there are also characters in this book named Peyton and what is it, Mrs. Brooks or something like that. Yep. Mrs. Brooks, yeah.
Philip,
yeah, there's a Philip. There's also, but my personal favorite, I even texted Collision about this when I got to this point. I think she shows up around page 150. Oh my God, there's a character in this book named Surreal.
She's my fave. I love Surreal.
Well, let's talk about Surreal. What did you like about kick-ass hooker magician assassin Surreal?
What's not to like about Surreal? She's a sexy sex worker assassin. That's who she is.
Yeah, like she's definitely the character. If this were a D&D campaign, she's the one you'd want to play.
And even she is a bit of a dick.
Yeah, because I keep thinking about who is it that they keep referring to as the sadist? That's Damon, right?
Yeah,
that's Damon.
Damon, yeah.
He's the one. He's the Lestat of this book. We haven't even gotten to the fact that this is basically someone who really loves Anne Rice. Just read a plot synopsis of Lolita and was like, I could do that.
Or looked at, what I actually think happened is she didn't want to pay for Lolita, so she ran it off at her local copy shop, but it got mixed up with a copy of the AD&D handbook, rulebook 4 in particular, and she was like, "Oh, Lolita the world."
But yeah, so he's very much the Lestat of this book, and I love his name because his name is Demon, spelled DAEMON, Yep. And then later, we're introduced to a horse whose name is Demon, Demon. Like, this book is very creative with its names, and they're all wonderful.
Yeah.
The other thing about names that's really problematic, the book actually does kind of know how ludicrous it is on like 2 separate pages out of 375. There's one where there's this long-running thing where Satan has a bunch of kids by a bunch of different women, none of whom he's really raised. But he feels really close with Damon, who's his greatest enemy as well.
Yes, of course.
Because they're just so similar, you see.
And love rival. That's very important.
Right. For a girl who, through the bulk of the book, is maxing out at 12 years.
Yeah.
It's the worst. But the thing is, he has actually named... Damon is his middle name. His full name is... Satan, Damon, stupid last name.
Oh, the last name.
Sada Diablo.
There you go. It's like the Marquis de Sade, right? But mixed with Diablo.
It's
clever. It's very clever. Bit highbrow. Not everyone gets it.
It flew right over my head until he started going by the shortened version, which was just Dabby. Which I'm not making that up. That really happens.
Actually, some of that naming stuff, like that, they're all Sa Diablo, but it's customarily shortened to Sadi. I kind of liked that stuff. I don't know why it actually felt kind of like some care was taken with it.
I liked it because then I didn't have to read the word Sa Diablo every other page.
That's a really fucking good point. The other thing that's one of the many nurse from Romeo and Juliet kind of salt of the earth caretaker characters just points out, if you think I'm going to stick my head out the window and yell, Satan, come in for dinner, you're crazy. I'm calling your kid Demon instead. The book sort of knows, but it also understands that if any crack in the facade shows, if anyone cracks a smile or is having a good time, the whole edifice is going to crumble.
Yeah.
On the subject of names, you mentioned Manny. Can I just inform the listeners what her job is?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So Manny is a nanny, obviously. There you go, logical naming. But also on the subject of names, I want to talk a bit about Char.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about Char.
Right, so there's this island that exists in hell, and it's inhabited only by dead children. Really nice and uplifting place, I'm sure. Now, in this universe, when you go to hell, you keep your form that you had when you died. So, however you die, you see it in your final form in death when you're an undead or demon dead or whatever they call it. And so you have this island full of murdered children. They're all hideously deformed and mutilated. And, some of them were tortured or whatever just before their final moments. So they're in pretty bad shape. Now, the leader of this island is a 12-year-old boy called Char, which I thought was just kind of an obscure name. But no, the way he died was he was burnt at the stake, and his appearance is he is literally just a charred body. He is so charred, they even specify they don't know what race he is.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, he's Deadpool, basically. It's really...
If Deadpool was called Burned Corpse.
Yeah, it's horrifying in many ways. When I started reading it, my first thought was Pokemon, of course. And
but
it ends up being far less cute.
Please, my lad, my name's Steve. Shut up, your name's Char.
It's so insensitive. Did they name him that after he burned alive? He's 12.
The problem is he was always named that, and he always felt this sneaking suspicion that he shouldn't be playing with matches.
Yeah, someone just had a real hard-on for poetic justice.
Yeah, if you have a foreshadowing name in this universe, you are what's the word? Oh, right, turbo fucked.
Yeah, if your name is Demon or Char or say I don't know, Spike through the peen. Yeah. There's nothing good that's going to happen to you. I am High Lord of Hell, Danny.
What about Lorne?
Oh yeah, Lorne. That's a good one too.
There's a super magical, powerful dragon in this world, and you think of all the names they could have given it. They could have given it something really cool, like Dragoon or something. But they just call it Lorne, which is the lamest name for a dragon. We're calling it now.
It definitely made me think of like a Hollywood executive like Lorne Michaels, Saturday Night Live. And the only thing cooler than a dragon named Lorne would be a dragon named like Uncle Marty or something like that. So.
Also, the super powerful ancient magical dragon is actually in drag through the bulk of the book as, just your average housemaid. She
Wait,
kinda
what?
Like
I missed that. What?
Yeah, she's
Draga or Draka, I forget the name. The maid, Satan's maid, turns out to actually be Lorne. I almost missed it, but luckily I was drunk enough by that point in the book that I had to reread it again later.
Oh, I thought they just had like a link or something. I didn't realize that was actually Lorne, the powerful magical dragon.
Yeah.
Yep, that's one of the big shocking parts that's very underdescribed and
casually thrown in on 3 pages from the end somehow.
I have tons and tons of notes of this book, but like they're all just kind of detached sentences, and like a bunch of them just keep saying things like, okay, I have to take a break because I'm tired of feeling embarrassed. And I've now reread 25% of this book without drinking, and I still don't understand it. Things like that.
Yeah.
So I guess it's probably a good point for us to move into a more structured discussion here. So we're going to do a thing called High Points, Low Points, and here is a song.
High points are high, and low points are low. High points, low points, get ready to go.
So my first high point would be, and this is, I feel this is a bit maybe cliche to pick, but I just had to. It's the rats, my balls are gone.
That is start strong is one of the big lessons of writing, and boy, like, this book starts strong.
That's like the only laugh you get in the whole book. Really, that's the only one that's truly like, ha, that's funny. And that's a man having his balls eaten by rats.
I think part of the humor, for me at least, is that this is a world where people are named things like, you know, Lucifer and Satan, and they use words like ring of obedience and stuff, but somehow men still refer to their testicles as balls, and that's just very funny to me.
Not just the men, like as actions are being described, there's at least one scene where I think Damon's trying to get his ring of obedience off, and he's clutching himself, and like the narration just says something like, he screamed in agony as his fingers brushed his balls, which is, you know, you don't read that in every book.
Yeah, definitely not in fantasy books very often.
It's funny because, like, although they use balls to refer to testicles, they are a lot more vague when it comes to describing the penis.
That I have a theory about that I'd like to save for a little bit later.
Okay.
Okay, because I was going to go right into my my high point. Kind of relates to this, actually, which is that there's, I guess you'd call them a race, I don't know. There's a group of magicians, mostly women, called Black Widows, who have a tiny snake fang underneath one of their fingernails that is venomous, but if it's not drained regularly, it can become very painful, and then their arm has to be amputated. So you have to make sure to milk the venom from your snake.
This is your high point?
This is my high point because there's a scene...
metaphor for blue balls, basically.
Yeah, but there's a scene before this is described where our sexy character, you know, Demon Desaad or Sadi or whatever, Sade, whatever his name is, is described as being mad at a woman.
He is
because that's
operator.
pretty much all he does throughout this book. Spoiler, is be mad at women. It says something that like, he had a lot of little claws. One in particular he'd like to show her. But that's before they described this whole, like, hidden snake tooth. And I thought they were implicitly saying that this man was not well endowed. And
I thought the exact same thing.
Although it is worth noting that it doesn't matter how he's endowed, because he is explicitly, possibly deliberately, impotent throughout the course of the book.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's the ring of obedience thing.
Well, no, not necessarily. Because there's a section in the book where he says he dares basically one of his, I'm going to call them clients, but it's not really fair to call them a client. They don't pay him. They're basically raping him on a nightly basis. But we'll call them clients. He eggs one of them on and says, without my ring of obedience, I'm sure I'll be able to get a big boner or whatever. And then he has a little internal monologue where he's like, actually, I've never really had one.
It's very Arrested Development. Like Ron Howard's voice comes in. He wasn't sure he could get a raging boner.
Actually, he couldn't.
Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, so that was my first high point, was just that one passage where it basically sounded they were just saying, he has a really small peen. Anyway, Collision.
My first high point is much more narrow than you guys and reveals the depths to which I was forced to reduce myself and indeed abase myself in front of the queen who runs the court I live in to get my daily supper.
You read this in front of your girlfriend? Oh, dear.
There was a lot of eye rolling and more reminders than normal that you're reading that, not me.
I don't need to hear everything in that book.
Yeah. Also, she asked what it was about at one point, and about 40 seconds later, her eyes unglazed, and she was like, you're going to have to work a lot harder at describing this because I'm bored as shit. Anywho, my high point was the following. Janelle beamed. Damon, it's a wonderful hat. It took him a moment to admit it to himself, but he was miffed. Now, miffed is not a word I expected to encounter in this beautiful, dark, twisted fantasy.
I am so glad, though, that you brought that one up, because I actually had that earmarked as one of my favorite moments as well. It's fantastic. Hang on, I'm just going to see if I can find the actual quote, because
That's fine.
It is beautiful.
Because I do want to bring up that this book does exist in a post-Harry Potter world by 1 year. I looked it up because I was like, I felt like there was a little bit of Harry Potter happening at certain points in time, which is a very creepy thing to say about a book like this. But when you have Mrs. Beale or whatever, like tottering about the kitchen, like making people nut cakes, whatever the hell that is, like,
oh my god, stop saying nut cakes. Fuck, it's like on every third page.
So the line after, but he was miffed, is my personal favorite, which is, he stood in front of her, on display, as it were. And the thing that fascinated her most was his hat. You do know how to bruise a man's ego, don't you, little one? He's so upset. He's so pissed off that he's admiring she's admiring his hat and not, like, just his dick. And she's, like, 12.
She's 12.
I want to mention just Damon's clothing in general, because there's so many descriptions of he's foppish, and this is one of my favorite paragraphs of the book that I had highlighted, and I just want to read it real fast. Damon shrugged into his black jacket. The clothes, too, were weapons, from the skimpy underwear to the perfectly tailored suits. Nectar to seduce the unwary to their doom.
It should be noted, Damon is the most beautiful man in all the land, and this is a world where all women are attracted to men.
Yeah.
There's hints of a little elective male homosexuality, but women are exclusively heterosexual in this world. And, like, he goes to the opera at one point, and, like, the book stops itself short of saying every panty in the house was wet. But it only stops itself short by about a millimeter. Like, I think it does literally say every woman was going to have to use her pleasure slave a little extra hard that night after seeing him. So he's the greatest seducer of all time. And usually they don't describe his clothes too much, but he's got, high cheekbones, a pointy face, long hair. And I finally realized, like, what I think he looks like is basically straight off a Castlevania or Final Fantasy box cover.
That's exactly what I thought of, too. And I mean, there's a lot of Castlevania vibes here, like, even right down to the names of, like, You know, I think one of those games had Alucard, which is Dracula spelled backwards. And this name is operating kind of, you know, on similar levels with Lucifer and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's time for a round of low points, though. So, Joe, if you'd like to start us off.
Okay. So am I going to talk about both low points or just one? Because if I'm only talking about one, I've got to pick carefully.
Just one, and then we'll go back around.
My low point will be when they ate the leg for dinner.
Oh, yeah.
What, you don't like lamb?
Tonight's dinner is leg.
Ooh, orphan leg.
Yum!
Yeah, we haven't talked about that. So this is a world where all sex is okay and there's no taboo against murder. So Damon gets to go kill people whenever he's upset with them, and people are like, well, you're not really supposed to do that, but there's nothing we can do about it. But one evil man in particular, even though all sex is okay, has decided that what he needs to do is set up a school for crazy teens where they are all subjected to torture and are forced to have sex with what are called uncles. And the depths of depravity that this school, what's it called, Briarwood?
It's called Briarwood, which is extra fucked up because that just sounds like the name of a real institution.
Yeah. Definitely.
And the depths of depravity that they reach at Briarwood, which, by the way, our titular or heroine, the daughter of the blood, Janelle, she is sent to that because she's such a powerful magician that her family just doesn't get her and thinks she's kind of spacey and possibly dumb.
I mean,
so
she
they
grew
keep
up
sending
there,
her
didn't
away.
she?
Yeah, she basically grew up there, and except that she can kind of walk between worlds, she spends a lot of her time there, and at one point was subjected to being served a dinner of orphan leg.
Yeah, so cannibalism is apparently horrible in this world where murder is okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to go next, and I just want to say my biggest low point for this book, aside from the obvious one that I think we're all dancing around just not to say it, because, God, I mean, you know, we said right at the top of the episode, this book is about, you know, the sexual fetishization of a child. Beyond that, I would say it's also just incredibly confusing. It's confusing to the point where this isn't like just a book that has a map in the front. It has like a list of characters, and then it also has a list of the jewel caste system, which, you know, everyone has different jewels, including one that I really liked called Birthright Purple Dusk, which sounds to me like racist lipstick. But it leads to paragraphs like this, and I was reading this just kind of with my jaw agape, trying to figure out what any of this is supposed to mean. Satan looked at each man in turn and saw the same uneasiness in 3 pairs of gold eyes. Mephis was a gray-jeweled warlord prince and almost unshakable. Prothvar was a red-jeweled Iron warrior, a warrior bred and trained. Andalvar was an Irian warlord prince who wore the Ebon Grey, the second darkest jewel. They were all strong men who didn't frighten easily, but now they were frightened. I just realized Irian is in this book.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They're like Hawkmen.
Yeah.
They're not Aryan, they're Hawkmen.
Okay, all right.
They live in the Eyrie, which is a fancy bullshit word for a place where hawks live.
Yeah, that's in some of those George Martin books too. So I'll let her get away with it.
Yeah.
I was just like, this is a world with a caste system based on color,
right?
And there are characters named Iryans, and that makes me a little uncomfortable now that I think about it.
But remember that this is a topsy-turvy thought experiment world where the darker something is, the better and more powerful it is, and it's better to go down than to go up. Is your mind blown yet, or can I stop?
You're going to have to. I feel like I'm descending into the depths of an Ebon Grey jewel with no way to control my magic.
Yeah, I also really like that the jewel system does go from white to black, and between gray and black is ebon gray, which is like, wow, you really worked hard to come up with a way to call it. Well, so there's gray, and there's dark gray.
Ebon gray, yeah. See, I've been reading it wrong out loud this whole time because I was reading it in my head as some kind of mystical word and not even thinking about ebony, which Jesus, this book has fucked with my head. I feel so much stupider since I've read it.
I would love to read this book on audiobook, because I think that would make a lot of the puns more obvious.
Oh, it exists, but it was going to cost me $17 to get the audio version, so I didn't do it.
Yeah, but it's Ice-T reading it, so...
Oh, well,
What?
that would be incredible. No, that's not true.
That's not true.
I would pay $17 to hear Ice-T read this book.
I would actually pay $17 to hear Joe read this book.
Okay, so I think you need a low point, Collision?
Oh, boy, do I. So this is a book that, as we mentioned, is set in a world that's bad. So this is a book where we haven't really talked about this, but the Satan and his two sons, Lucifer, or two of his sons, Lucifer and Damon, are all desperately in love with Janelle and wish to serve her, right? So this is a book where a prepubescent girl is the object of adoration and love, but it would be very, very bad if they were ever to touch her, right? And act on that and make it a physical act. And that actually kind of clicked for me as I was coming over, like, oh, right, because this is, in fact, a book for, like, 14-year-old girls.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it would be good to be, adored. It would be bad to be diddled. But that means that you get awful moments that make you put the book down and just, like, go think about cleansing thoughts for a while, like the following.
Yeah, I took a lot of really hot showers and scrubbed really hard when I was done reading this book.
It's not all being miffed that your girlfriend likes that your fake underage girlfriend likes your hat better than she likes you. Sometimes you get things like Damon musing, men, boys. In a few years, he'd be able to show her the difference.
Yeah, at one point it's explicitly, I believe he even says, when she's 17, that's when it'll be okay.
Don't put a number on it.
No, I mean, are you Kip Winger? What's going on here? That was a really bad hair metal joke for the people in their 40s who listen to this show.
Yeah. But I want to read one more because we haven't really talked about the prose in this book. And so I want to read one of the most purple flowers we get.
Is it purple, dark purple birthright?
It's there might be a purple vein. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Terrible.
I'm
Please,
sorry.
Please don't. You're not allowed to talk anymore. You forfeit.
The ember in his loins that had been warming him ever since the first time he saw her flared briefly and subsided. By the way, this ember in his loins has been burning since the first time he saw her when she was 6.
No, it's so weird.
And then just as a cleansing pit of bad prose, this was the place where he brewed his poisons and wove his tangled webs of dreamscapes and visions.
That's my favorite Sisters of Mercy song, too.
Fucking okay Garth Marenghi.
Blood, and pieces of sick. Okay, one more round of low points. Joe, start us off, please.
I think we've already covered my second low point, kind of, inadvertently, which is everyone wanting to fuck an actual 7-year-old.
Yeah, I figured this was going to be on everyone's list to some extent. So you can elaborate because I feel uncomfortable even just saying it.
It's very odd. And as soon as she's brought into the book, like immediately, it's all about her appearance. She's described as looking very plain, but having these incredibly engaging, intelligent, sapphire-coloured eyes. And we're first introduced to Janelle, the 7-year-old, when she meets Lucifer, the demon and son of Satan, High Lord of Hell, obviously. And they have a bit of a brief chat. This is just after Lucifer has killed the man whose balls were eaten by rats. And he sees Janelle, a 7-year-old, and she says, "Hello, you were wanting a friend. I'm here if you want a friend." And he immediately acts all a bit weird. She sees the dead body with his balls being eaten by rats, and she tries to run away. And you'd think, you're an adult, this little girl who's clearly frightened by your presence. Maybe I'll just leave her alone. She can run off home. That's fine. No.
Maybe my huge-ass bat wings are somehow off-putting to her, for example.
Yeah. No. He grabs her, holds her to him as close as possible, and basically refuses to let her go. Even after she screams, bites him, scratches his face, he just holds her tighter and tighter. And the scene, or the chapter, ends with them kissing each other goodbye, and her saying, "When will I ever see you again, Lucifer?" And him being like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll see you when you're an adult, and I'll never forget what you look like because you're so beautiful, and obviously I'm in love with you."
Yeah, I think that's where the 17 is dropped, as a matter of fact. It's horrible. Yeah, at one point it says he put his hand over her mouth during that scene so that she couldn't scream, and ugh.
Well, because the guards will hear. And let's not forget the fact that he teaches her to protect herself.
Yes.
By racking men.
That was actually my second high point.
Well, damn it. Thanks a lot, Collision. So I'm going to do a low point here real fast, which is just something I think that from the excerpts we've read already, our listeners will be able to guess is coming. The prose in this book is very bad. Miss Bishop really likes adjectives a lot. And I found one paragraph in particular, I think, that really illustrates this. It's one of our first scenes with Surreal. She likes adjectives so much, she names characters after them. But Surreal swung through the front door of Deja's Red Moon house in Belden Mar, flashed a smile at the brawny, red-coated doorman, and continued through the plant-strewn, marble-floored entryway until she reached the reception desk. Once there, she smacked the little brass bell on the desk enough times to annoy even the most docile temper. A door marked private snapped open, and a voluptuous middle-aged woman hurried out. When she saw Surreal, her scowl vanished, and her eyes widened with delighted surprise. And the whole book is written like that.
Yep.
Fuck. All right, Collision, low point.
Where do I start?
I think that for me also just a secondary low point is that somebody recommended that we read this book, and I'm mad. I'm still mad. I can't remember who it was. I'm still mad at them because then I had to recommend it to somebody else.
A low point, you say. So a lot of this book is like somebody walking you through the world they've tried to create in an RPG.
Yes.
This is a book where the magic is very rule governed. That can go either way in terms of being a fun thing to read or a incredibly just grinding, boring thing to read. Anyway, sorry, I'm struggling with this, but there are multiple moments in this book where it just sort of says, he wore the black jewel. That meant he had no problem with two people wearing red jewels. And it's just like, it's all very given. You know what I mean? And it's all very explained. Like there's a couple moments where it's mentioned that there are things in this world that not everybody understands. And I thought I really liked that and thought it was like a really subtle thing to do until I realized that no, it wasn't a subtle thing to do. It was just a respite because the entire rest of the fucking book is this double-barreled locomotive of exposition coming down at you and you're tied to the track. And it's just like, he had been born with a green jewel. Since you could only descend 3 more jewels at your birthright or your first night ceremony. He ended up with a off brown jewel, and now he had the jewel, and that's the entire fucking book.
To digress slightly here, and I agree 100%. About 10 years ago, I had a World of Warcraft phase where I played World of Warcraft for about 2 years, and then I didn't play for a long time. And then I'd say about a year and a half ago, I was curious about what's been going on in World of Warcraft because that game still exists. and I went and I read some Wikipedia articles about World of Warcraft, and that is the exact same vibe I got from reading this novel.
Yeah.
It's like, Prince Arthas has been doing this and yada yada, and so much stuff happens off screen in this book that you're just supposed to understand that I checked no less than 3 times to make sure this was actually the first book in the series.
Yeah.
And it is, but I felt like I had missed like at least 5 books worth of details.
Yeah, so the very first page of actual book content after the acknowledgments, you get like the rules of the world in a organic and easy to and fun to engage with way. Opal is the dividing line between lighter and darker jewels because it can be either. When making the offering to the darkness, capitals, a person can descend a maximum of 3 ranks from his/her birthright jewel, capitals.
Can I make an offering to the darkness to stop making records? Oh, all right, sorry.
I believe in a thing called beating a dead horse.
All right.
Example, birthright white could descend to rose. And you're supposed to look up at the list above and go white, yellow, tiger eye, rose. Yep, that's 3 levels. The math checks out. And then this, like right under that, like I was groaning, like we're at page -2 at this point. The book proper has not started. Author's note, the SC in the names Skelt, Skival, and Skuran is pronounced sh. So, are any of the other SCs to be pronounced that way?
No, just those 3. Which means
so
Sharon
why
is
not
actually Sharon.
Right. So, I was really excited about this character, my Scarona, but now I know it's just my Sharona. But give me a fucking reason if you're going to introduce this bullshit orthography, or, don't just stipulate it at the beginning and raise the degree of difficulty for me as a reader.
Well, guess what? I skipped the front matter. So.
Oh, you must have been lost as balls.
No, I mean, it doesn't sound like you were any less lost than I was. So. Speaking of, impenetrable plots and Wikipedia articles, why not check out the television series Lost?
Yeah.
Anyway, one last round of high points. Joe, if you can salvage one.
Thank you. Okay, so I've already said my second high point, which is Janelle kicking men in the dick. So as we mentioned earlier, first time Janelle meets Lucifer, he captures her and holds her really close and makes her super uncomfortable. Remember, she's also a victim of rape. We don't know this at this point in the book, but it's worth remembering this now in hindsight. So he teaches her to kick men in the dick to protect herself in future, which she does to Satan. It's great.
She kicks Satan in the balls.
Oh wait, no, it's not Satan. It's Satan's other son. Is that right?
Oh, I think it may happen to both of them.
Yeah.
I'm going to pretend it does, because then there's now a direct through line between this and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
And also the movie that gave us the immortal quote, Wolfman's got nards.
What was the Monster Squad?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. But yeah, it is. And it's not explicitly described at first. It says I think it says something like, he taught her how to defend herself if a man grabbed her from behind.
Yeah.
And they leave it very vague until the first time she literally just boots a dude in the balls.
Yeah.
And it's glorious. So, all right. So for me, my final high point, I think, was essentially realizing that every male character in this book is basically a goth teenager that hangs out at the mall. There's literally a description several times of men in this lighting what are referred to as black cigarettes, yes. Which I was like, oh shit, they're smoking cloves. They're all wearing velvet jackets and ruffly shirts and smoking cloves and kind of I don't know if it's intentional or not, but quoting the Smiths. At one point in this book, somebody says something would be a luxurious way to die, and I'm like, I could not hear it as a heavenly way to die in my mind. So yeah, just the realization that these are the guys who hang out outside of the entrance closest to the Hot Topic, smoking cloves and hissing at people when they walk by. That was a huge high point for me.
To me, it reminded me of Twilight. I don't know if you guys have read that. everyone in Twilight obviously is incredibly sexy and has like magic powers that make them even sexier. And a lot of the men in this seem to have weird magic powers that made them sexy.
I wonder if the author of Twilight was kind of inspired by this series, because there were so many similarities that I went to make sure to check the date. Because first I was getting 50 Shades of Grey vibes, but I'm like, no, this is definitely before 50 Shades of Grey. But then I remembered that was based on Twilight, and I'm like, well, which of these came first? And this beat Twilight by about 5 years.
I mean, I think it's kind of parallel evolution. Like, the audience for this kind of book likes what this kind of book is.
Yeah, it all
right?
comes from Anne Rice. It all comes from the same horrid well,
yeah,
basically.
It's dark romance, I gather. And, like, it's not a huge shock that dark romance isn't necessarily for me. But, yeah, I think the tropes are the tropes. I don't think it's a matter of, like, one thing stealing from another. I think it's just, like, this is what the genre is like. There's presumably an audience who finds this, grandpa lining up to teach you magic while his son lines up to just be nice to you and take you for horse rides. Like, deeply fulfilling to read.
I mean, yeah,
that's not me.
When you describe it that way and remove all the creepy sex shit, I could actually see how this appeals to people. But I have a really hard time classifying this as romance in any sort of fashion. And, maybe that's because I'm a dude or whatever. But, like, to me, there's very little that's romantic in this and a lot that's predatory.
Okay, I feel I can offer a female perspective here, because there were moments in this book that I actually found myself going, oh, okay, yeah, I see the appeal. Like, there are certain moments with the way the author describes Demon, the way he takes such good care of himself. He's very clean, he dresses extremely well, he wears, like, leather jackets and, like, blousy kind of white button-up shirts that are kind of undone to reveal his rippling abs. There's a lot of very descriptive language used towards a lot of the male characters, which, I'm just going to say as a woman, you don't see a lot of that in a lot of books written by men. At least not heterosexual men.
Interesting, yeah.
So, I mean, I at least appreciated that bit, but then you get all the weird sexualization of a literal 7-year-old, so,
I did... It's definitely, yeah. One of my favorite sentences, actually, that I had highlighted is, I think, a really good kind of example of that. But I had highlighted it mostly because it's such a weird juxtaposition of the supernatural and just the totally banal, which is a chapter that starts out, it says, 5, hell. Satan left the small apartment adjoining his private study, vigorously toweling his hair. Yeah.
He's sexy.
It's not quite a high point or a low point, but did it jump out to you guys what people actually use magic for in this world mostly?
Yeah, they mentioned that a couple of times that you can use the craft, which is what they call the magic power. You can use the craft for everyday things, and they never, ever explain what those things are.
Okay, but they throw it in every once in a while. So basically, every time Satan enters a room, he lights the candles by doing magic. When he leaves a room, he snuffs the candles by doing magic. When he wants to, like, give a present to Janelle, he doesn't lean forward and hand it to her. He telekinetically magics it over to her. Damon literally keeps his luggage in a special hell realm, so it doesn't have to clutter his room. Like, that's where all his clothes are.
That's true minimalism.
Yeah, and there's a specific school of magic called hearthcrafting, which appears to be magical housekeeping, like from the Fantasia kind of book. They use magic for very mundane things.
Yeah, it's like they light their cigarettes with magic, but they're still just cigarettes.
It's like David Blaine all over the place.
Yeah. So sorry, I still owe you a high point, and I'm gonna cheat a little bit. You were reminded of high flown things. What I was reminded of is a little closer to Earth. There's a moment where Janelle is trying to force Damon to go do something, and so she's doing this charming little girl thing where she just, like, puts her hands on his lower back and pushes him through a door, and he looks around, he's like, there wasn't a door here before. So powerful, yet uncontrolled is her magic. But it just reminded me of the early Simpsons episode where Hank Scorpio says, Homer, do you mind hanging my coat on the wall here at work? And Homer looks around and is like, relax, Homer. At Globex, we don't believe in walls. Matter of fact, I didn't even give you my coat. And Homer looks down and there's no coat in his hands. And it's just the stupidest gag of all time.
Congratulations, you've now made a Simpsons reference.
Exactly. And that, but it was such a, it was just so ridiculous. It was like a completely unwitting callback to the dumbest gag in history. And that was my final high point.
All right, so we need to take a break before we come back and we do what I know everyone listening to this show is waiting for, which is dramatic readings from this piece of shit.
And some other darkly sensual games.
Yep, so I'm going to go polish my Ebon Grey Jewel.
Whoa!
I'm sorry, guys. Too much information. And we will be right back. Presto! We've returned magically through a door which previously was not there.
Hey, it's a little dark in here. Could somebody light a candle? But the magic way?
Well, I just snapped my long painted fingers, and suddenly the room is lit quite romantically. So this is the part of the show where we play some games. And we're going to start out with the most questionable segment in podcasting history this time around. This is Dramatic Readings.
Dramatic readings. We're gonna make it sound important. Dramatic readings. Yeah, I got some words for you.
All right, so in Dramatic Readings, we take parts of this book and we read them to you. We try to make them sound very important, or in this case, we try not to run from the room screaming whilst doing so. I'm going to start us off with, I found this part of the book to be pretty entertaining in much of the way that reading the instructions of, say, how to put together a model or a piece of IKEA furniture would be. And also because it begins with the first, and once again, I'm speaking to my fellow olds out there, and it should be mentioned, the woman who wrote this book, at the time she wrote this book, was 43 years old, so she probably was not accidentally referencing a Poison song every single time she mentioned Ride the Wind. So, here we go. You ride the winds? He yelped. She raised a finger to test the air. Not breezes or puffs of air Lucifer ground his teeth. The winds, the webs, the psychic roads in the darkness. Janelle perked up. Is that what they are? He managed to stop in mid-curse. Janelle leaned forward. Are you always this prickly? Most people think I'm a prick, yes. What's that mean? Never mind. He chose a sharp stone and drew a circle on the ground between them, and here comes the fun. This is the realm of Teriel. He placed a round stone in the circle. This is the Black Mountain, Eben, Escavi, where the winds meet. He drew straight lines from the round stone to the circumference of the circle. These are tether lines. He drew smaller circles within the circle. These are radial lines. The winds are like a spider web. You can travel on the tether or the radial lines, changing direction where they intersect. There's a web for each rank of the blood jewels. The darker the web, the more tether and radial lines there are, and the faster the wind is. You can ride a web that's your rank or lighter. You can't ride a web darker than your jewel rank unless you're traveling inside a coach being driven by someone strong enough to ride that web, or you're shielded by someone who can ride that web. If you try, you probably won't survive. Thank you for attending my TED Talk about how to level up your characters in Final Fantasy X.
I have to say, if that had a moderately good Vivian Campbell riff underneath it and Dio were singing it, I probably really would have liked that part.
These are the tether lines. You can jump down into the smallest circle.
You can't handle it unless you're in the coach. Yeah.
Drive that web if you're shielded. All right, that's enough bad Dio for one episode. Collision.
Grown men reject goth-ass bullshit, respectfully suggest it be D&D metal-style bullshit instead.
Let me tell you, I'm not down with guys smoking cloves outside of a Hot Topic, but I am down with men in frilly shirts creeping through a castle with a big fake sword.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
For sure. Okay, I'm going to read...
Wait.
Oh.
Jump on the tiger! Okay.
Exactly. Something, you can see his stripes, but you know he's clean.
That's exactly it.
Oh, don't you know what I mean?
And no, Ronnie, I don't know. I never quite figured that out. Okay.
If you don't like Dio, do not at me. Dio rules, and I just wish I had not wasted a bunch of my life being too cool to realize how good Dio is.
Folks at home, if you're not a Dio fan, go find a Dio album cover on the internet. Invert it 180 degrees. The Dio logo upside down spells devil.
What?
It's mind-blowing.
Wow.
Okay, so I'm going to dramatically read, and there were really only two sections that I could possibly have done, horsey time or dress-up time, and I have chosen dress-up time.
Yeah, that's important.
And the degree of difficulty I have set myself is to not do the Billy Quizboy voice, which I heard the bulk of this book in.
I'm always a fan of the Billy Quizboy voice, but if you want to exercise restraint, that's fine.
I want to exercise restraint. I would do a sexy fop voice. Unfortunately, I live in a world where reflective surfaces exist, so I know that sexy fop is not exactly my strong suit, even as a voice actor. So I'm just going to give it to you straight.
Okay.
Damon stormed into his room, slammed the door, stripped off his clothes, showered, and stormed back into the bedroom. Bitch. Stupid, mewling bitch. How dare she? How dare she? Leland's words burned through him. We're having a gathering this evening, just a few of my friends. You'll be serving us, of course, so I expect you to dress appropriately. If the bitch wanted a whore tonight, he'd give her a whore. Lifting one hand, Damon called in 2 private trunks. Wherever he traveled, the trunks that contained his clothes and personal effects were always openly displayed, and the contents could be examined by any queen or steward who chose to rummage through his things. Those were the only ones he ever acknowledged. The private trunks contained the items that were, in some way, of value to him. One of those trunks was half empty and held personal mementos, a testimony to the paucity of his life. It also contained the locked, velvet-lined cases that held his jewels, the birthright red and the cold, glorious black. The other trunk contained several outfits that he sneeringly referred to as whore's clothes, costumes from a dozen different cultures designed to titillate the female senses. He opened the costume trunk and examined the contents. Yes, that outfit would do very nicely. He removed a pair of black leather pants. The left...
I told you she likes poison. Anyway, sorry.
The leather so soft and cut so well, they fit like a second skin. He pulled them on, adjusting the bulge in the front to best advantage. Next came black, ankle-high leather boots with a high, stacked heel. The perfectly tailored white silk shirt formed a slashing V from his neck to his waist, where 2 pearl buttons held it closed, and had billowing, tight-cuffed sleeves. Next, he took out the paint pots, and with cold, cruel deliberation, applied subtle color to his cheeks, eyes, and lips. It was done with such skill that it made him look androgynous and yet more savagely male, an unsettling blend. Returning the paint pots to the trunks, he took a small gold hoop from its box and slipped it into his ear. He brushed his hair and used craft to set it in a rakishly disheveled style. Last was a black felt hat with a black leather band and a large white plume. Standing before the full-length mirror, he carefully set the hat in place and inspected his reflection.
Okay, so I hate to keep beating this drum, but he just dressed exactly like Bret Michaels on the cover of Look What the Cat Dragged In, and I can't get past the glam rockiness of it all.
Androgynous, yet savagely male. Oh, David Bowie, what hath thou wrought?
My favourite thing about this whole section is that it's like one page later is when he gets offended about Janelle liking his hat. He's wearing this sexy pirate outfit and he's hoping to impress a 7-year-old with his sexy sex worker outfit and leather pants, and then he's upset that she likes the feather in his hat.
Yeah, I mean, she is a 7-year-old. Of course it's going to be the floppy hat.
I really hope that this is a story that Anne Bishop found, like Andrew Eldritch complaining that a 7-year-old girl stopped him on the street and was like, I like your hat, Mr. Sisters of Mercy guy. And he was just like so angry about it. And this is her little tip of the plume to him. Because you know she was on those message boards, right? That,
Usenet groups like alt.goth.whatever.
Yeah, alt.propagandamagazine.whatever.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've been saving this for
Save
last.
the best for last.
But Joe, it is your turn to do a dramatic reading.
Okay, I'm very excited. I feel I should give no context to this. Lucifer opened his eyes to silence. The bed curtains were closed at the bottom of the bed, and along one side, cutting off the view of the room. He tried to shift position and ease his stiff muscles, but he had been stretched out when they tied him, and there wasn't any slack. He licked his lips. He was so thirsty, so tired, so easy to slip away from the pain, from the memories. Male voices murmured in the hallway, movement in the room, hidden by closed curtains. At last, Zultar said, "Bring him in." The room was grey, a sweet, misty grey, where the light danced through shards of glass and voices were heard underwater. The guards untied his hands and feet, retied his hands behind his back. Lucifer snarled at them, but it was a faraway sound of no importance at all. For a moment, when he saw the marble lady, his vision cleared and the pain made his legs buckle. The guards dragged him to the leather leg straps, forced him to his knees, and strapped him to the floor behind his knees and at his ankles. They rolled the marble cylinder with its smoothly carved orifices into position. When he was fitted into an orifice, they held him in place with a leather strap beneath his buttocks. There was enough slack for him to thrust, but not enough for him to withdraw. The grey, the sweet, twisting grey. "That will be all," Zultar said arrogantly, waving the guards out of the room with her switch and locking the door. The floor hurt his knees. Pain. Sweet pain. The switch hit his buttocks. Blood trickled over the leather. Scented silk brushed against his shoulder and face. "Are you thirsty, Yassie?" Zultar cooed as she swung herself up onto the flat top of the marble lady. "Want some cream?" She opened her robe and spread her thighs, revealing the dark triangle of hair. The switch hit his shoulder. "This is your reward, Yassie. This is your pleasure." Red streaks in the grey, red streaks in a dark triangle. "Thrust, you bastard!" The switch hitting, cutting where one wing joined his back. Thrust, 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 into the grey, lips against the wet, tongue obedient. Thrust, thrust, deeper, into the pain, the wet, the dark, the twisting to a sweetness, shards of glass twisting, the wet, the dark streaked the wed, the hunger, the pain, the red fire boiling, rising, the ebon grey boiling, rising, the hunger, teeth, pleasure, pain, moaning, teeth, pleasure, rising, boiling, pain, pleasure, moaning, hunger, teeth, screaming, red, hot, sweet, red, boiling, rushing, free. Lucifer swayed, confused. Zultar rolled on the floor, screaming. He tried to lick the moisture from his lips, but something was in the way. He turned his head and spat. For a long time, while guards pounded on the locked door and Zultar screamed, he stared at the small thing his teeth had found to ease the hunger. At first, he didn't really understand what it was. When his flaccid organ finally slipped out of the orifice, and he recognised the red for what it was, Lucifer lifted his head and let out a howling, savage laugh.
Oh, goodness. Those were some words.
I am so uncomfortable right now.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't blame you. There's a very specific reason I picked the part about, traveling around in circles and lines.
He bit her clit off.
That is what happened, isn't it? I couldn't figure it out the first time I read it. And then, after hearing it, I just realized that's what happened.
I had to read it literally 20 times before I understood what was going on there.
I had to read it a second time, and rarely have I wished that a book had more passages set in italics, because that would allow me to exercise my one and only rule with these books. I don't read passages that are exclusively in italics. Yeah. And that might have spared me that. That whole, twisting, burning, thrusting bit is my third favorite Rammstein song, though.
I was thinking of Billy Squires stroking. But yeah. We've been really heavy on the shitty 80s rock this time around. I think that's maybe my psychic defense mechanism is I've withdrawn into a shell,
yeah.
And now I'm just only thinking about, Warrant and Motley Crue.
Well, you've spiraled down into your inner self, and we're going to have to send a spear out to connect with you.
Just as long as it's the good kind of spear and not one of the two bad kinds of spears that are also discussed in this book. Wasn't there something? Oh, yeah, that was it.
There's a bad kind of spear discussed on the first page of the book that I think Joe wanted to get to.
Yeah, and there's also something about seduction tendrils.
Seduction tendrils.
Which I think that's the part that reminded me of walking in on my roommate watching anime porn. But, yeah.
I mean, what's sexier than words like tendrils and orifice?
What about lollipop?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you forgot about that, didn't you? I'm not going to let you forget about it.
Yeah, we did make you read this book, so we deserve it.
Let's let the audience in on what we're talking about. Do you want to do the honors on lollipop?
Yeah, I'll do it. So lollipop is basically another of the many vague terms used in this book to infer a man's penis. But it's specifically used in the context of the children at Briarwood who are forced into doing sexual services to the uncles. And honestly, I'm ashamed how long it took me to realise that they weren't talking about actual nice lollipops, and they were actually talking about penises.
Yeah, all the Briarwood stuff creeps me out, because in the context of a fantasy world where everyone has wings and things like that, I can kind of deal with this. But when suddenly you're talking about a wicked institution where everyone seems relatively real worldy and they're called uncles and stuff, it gets extra creepy. And it feels very Law and Order SVU. Mm-hmm. Not to go back to the Ice-T well, but
and is the term of art uncles for these guys, is that the best idea the book has or the worst idea the book has, or both at the same time?
It's both at the same time, for sure, because it manages to be horrifying. If I were, say, playing a video game like Resident Evil or something, and there were sexualized, creepy monsters named uncles, I would find that very effective, I think.
Mm.
Yeah.
But, okay, anyway. I know there was one more small part you wanted to read, Joe.
I just wanted to give everyone just an idea of what this book does from the very beginning, which is just drop the reader right in at the deep end. There is no pretense about what this book covers in terms of themes. So this is on the very first page, just to give some sort of context. It's hard to break a blood-jeweled male, but a witch's life hangs by the hymenal thread, and what happens on her virgin night determines whether she is whole to practice the craft or becomes a broken vessel, forever aching for the part of her that's lost. And that's to describe the virgin night ceremony, which, as I said, only happens to girls who are about 12 or 13 years old. It's part of the culture that when you turn 13, you must have your virgin night ceremony, wherein you are brutally raped to the point of either finally getting all your magic powers or being broken in every way you can define the word.
Yeah. It's also, right before that, I was broken on a warlord's spear. Yeah. And it took me a very long time to realize that spear is, once again, one of the many euphemisms in this book. This wasn't what you might expect when you see the word war juxtaposed with the word spear, like a guy actually using a, weapon of war. No.
Well, I was born in a crossfire hurricane, so...
Back to the classic rock.
I can't. I'm telling you, this is how I deal.
This is a problem.
If I ever have anything intensely traumatic happen to me, someone's gonna find me in the corner muttering the lyrics to a Warrant song. Be like, oh, something terrible's happened to Jay. He just keeps talking about the Down Boys over and over again.
That's pretty much what happens every time I come over. Anyway.
All right. So let's move on. Let's do one more. Let's do a new game.
Yeah. This is called This is a Test. And it is what it sounds like. I did not have the ebook version that Jay had, so I was not able to harness the awesome power of technology to make literal virtual flashcards.
I made flashcards for this book, everybody. But I put it away.
Yeah,
I've put away childish things. I will not cheat, I promise.
Yeah. Joe, you are bound by your honor, as Damon would be, not to cheat.
Okay.
Which is lower and therefore better, Tiger Eye or Opal?
Opal. Opal, because it could be on the cusp of either a lighter or darker color.
I'm just going to agree with that. Sure, Opal. Sounds great.
It's the one with the asterisks.
It is the one with the asterisks.
Wow. Total recall.
Yeah. All right. Which is darker, therefore lower, therefore better? Summer Sky or Sapphire?
Sapphire.
Wait, no. What was it? Sapphire or Summer Sky?
Yeah.
I'm guessing Sapphire because of her eyes.
Yeah. The child has sapphire eyes, and that means she's badass.
Yeah.
All right. Double or nothing. Which is darker, therefore better? Purple Dusk or Sapphire?
Purple Dusk?
Purple Dusk Birthright is the one that sounds like racist lipstick. I remember that from my notes. Or possibly the name of one of those weird Aryan groups where two small children are told by their parents to sing songs about how they're racist. Oh no, that's Prussian Blue. I'm gonna still say Sapphire. I'm sticking to my guns.
Jay's right. All right, now we're gonna move off the jewels.
Okay.
Which will
we will run the jewels, as the kids say.
Do the kids say that? Because I thought that was a LL Cool J reference, and I don't think the kids give a shit about LL Cool J. Or what is he on? Hawaii 5-0 now?
He's on one. No, I don't know. One of those fucking shows.
NCIS LA or something.
Yeah, I don't know. One of those thousands of shows about police solving sex crimes. Yeah.
All right. What is a Landon?
Oh, I know this one.
Joe, it's all you.
Okay, a Landon is just the term they use for someone who doesn't carry the craft, or they don't have blood magic. A normie, a muggle.
I was just going to say a muggle. Yeah.
And is that for males or females?
For everyone.
Very good.
Trick question.
Damn. I'm an expert.
Somebody was paying a lot more attention than me.
I honestly,
I gotta say,
I ignored the Landon definition the first read through, and then the second read through, I was like, now I'll bother with learning all the castes and the structure of the actual society and everything. I honestly didn't bother reading any of it on my first read through. You don't need to know it.
I read most of this book at various bars. I have to admit. It took a lot of liquid courage for me to get through this one. Pints of Guinness make you strong. So.
Reading it in public is impressive.
Well, it's an e-reader version, right? So nobody actually knew. And if you sit at a bar, no one would be at the booth behind you, maybe accidentally looking over your shoulder and seeing the 2 or 3 words that make you look horrible.
I couldn't read this without blushing, so it's impossible for me to read this out of the house.
No, I think there are at least 3 places near my house now that think I'm an alcoholic because of how quickly I was downing pints to get through this book. So.
Yeah. And, especially since the book starts to rub off on you and you're just like snapping your fingers imperiously. In keep.
Yes. More mead.
Speaking of Guinness, as we were, which of these are actual characters in the book? Guinness, Jameson, Hennessy, Bushmill.
There is a Guinness. I remember that.
There is.
There is.
He's a stable boy, I think.
I'm pretty sure Hennessy is one.
I made that up. I don't think Hennessy is one.
But is there a Jägermeister?
Okay, second to last one. Place these ranks in ascending order.
Oh, jeez. I'm fucked.
Prince, Warlord, Warlord, Prince.
Oh my god.
Well, I'm gonna say Prince goes at the top because he wore beautiful purple clothing, which is a powerful color, as we all know.
I disagree. I think Prince goes at the bottom, and I think Warlord is top, and I think Warlord Prince might be middle, or Warlord Prince might be top, but I don't think Prince is top.
All right, Warlord is at the bottom.
Damn it.
That is a jeweled male, equal in status to a witch, which is the lowest status of blood female.
Which makes no sense, because witch, as in witch with a capital W, is the most powerful being in the world.
Yes, but the difference is the capital.
Yeah, the capital W makes all the difference, just like how the movie was actually 2 V's next to it. Yeah.
Which means if you ever have the misfortune of meeting me in person, you will understand that I refer to it out loud as the Vivitch. The Vivitch. Because it pleases me to do so.
I saw the Vivitch in one of those movie theaters where you can sit down and order food.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, bad combination. Anyway.
I saw it at a goat farm, and I'm still getting over it. There's another subtle tell that witch with lowercase is a count noun, so it takes an article, a witch, the witch, some witches, where capital W witch, I think, is a mass noun.
Yeah.
So it's just sort of an abstract, unquantifiable
thing. It's sort of like that Norwegian band Ghost.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sure.
So anyway, Warlord is at the bottom, a jeweled male equal in status to a witch. Prince is a jeweled male equal in status to a priestess or healer.
Excuse me, Prince was a jeweled male, and we should speak of him with the respect he deserves.
Right. Healers and priestesses, I guess, have the same status. And a warlord prince is a dangerous, extremely aggressive jeweled male in status slightly lower than a queen.
Okay, so being extremely aggressive gives you higher status then?
Yes, because the more violent you are, the more powerful you are. Violence is rewarded in this society, as far as I remember.
Yeah, that is true. Oh man, this is all so confusing.
You know what else is really, really valued in this society that we haven't talked about is Christmas, which is 13 days long and sort of a whole village festival. Again, that was one of the moments where I was like, wow, we've been talking about horses for a long time. And now there's a big Christmas where everybody's lining up to be nice to the little girl. I'm starting to see who this book might be for.
Yeah, definitely. And who it might be written by, which in this case was someone who, as far as I'm just guessing here, worked at a mall in one of those stores that sells Precious Moments figurines, but has a real dark side.
She might have worked across from the sword shop and just seen an awful lot of schlubby, black-clad men, and were like, if I were going to find that guy attractive, what would I have to do to him?
See,
he'd have to be a lot taller, dress a lot better.
See, I was reading this book thinking, like, worrying genuinely that the author had been horribly abused in her past.
Yeah, there's definitely some impressions of that. I prefer to think of the happy-go-lucky mall definition because it makes things easier to process. But I also want to mention, you talked about the sword shop in the mall, which I believe stopped existing sometime around the year of 1989 or 1990.
This woman is my mom's age.
Yeah, no, she's 3 years older than my mother, and I remember they all had that giant Swiss Army knife that was automated.
Oh yeah,
and
Victorinox.
all of the little pieces of this fake Swiss Army knife would move in and out. And then when you went inside, for some reason, it was a store at the mall that sold cutlery and like kitchen knives, but then also nunchucks and like ninja stars and samurai swords for some reason. And it was like a chain. They were everywhere.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
This was I believe this is a very American thing, I have to think, because it feels like something that could not exist anywhere else, like but a country where you can, buy a gun at a department store.
I've never even seen a nunchuck in real life, let alone seen a shop that sells them.
Oh my God, you have to come to America.
We'll take you to all the finest nunchuck shops.
Yeah, but let me ask a question.
All the weapons I've ever wanted to see.
I had a friend visit from New Zealand once, and we were at the park that everyone goes to in San Francisco when it's sunny out, and everyone hangs out there and, brings a picnic lunch and drinks beer. And
gets super high. It's called Dolores Park. Yeah, it's always fun.
Very true. Everyone is very high. But he just kept pointing at people randomly and honestly asking me, do you think that guy has a gun? Do you think that guy has a gun?
That, I think, is how I would spend most of my time in America. Very paranoid and wondering who has a gun.
Well, so
it's safe. I mean, it's a safe assumption to make, but I just found it hilarious. That was his thing. There were people LARPing, and he's like, "Do you think they have guns?"
So Joe, you're from a far off land.
Yes.
Let me just ask you, where do you get your swords?
On the internet, like everyone else from the UK.
Okay.
I was going to say the dark web, and then I realized we've been talking about the dark web for like an hour and a half.
Oh, that's terrible.
Like the dork web.
And somehow you've made it more terrible. All right, so I just had a couple questions. This isn't really a test, but I am curious here. I know that lately, these days, it's become very popular for people to get tattoos of, things from fantasy series. Like, you definitely see a lot of people with Harry Potter tattoos. The Robert Jordan Wheel of Time had the Aes Sedai, which were like the witch faction, and I've seen quite a few people with tattoos of that kind of iconography. Game of Thrones house sigils.
The cast of Lord of the Rings famously all got runes tattooed on them.
Oh my God.
So I'm just curious. If you were to get, let's say, a Daughter of the Blood tattoo, what would it be?
Easy question, because I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. I would have the full set of uncut coloured jewels in a circle on my chest, like in my cleavage, and I'd have an inner ring of the 13 uncut black jewels to signify my power within this realm.
That is fucking awesome. That is so much better than mine, which was just going to be the faces of Lucifer and Satan with a little heart and then like one of those scrolls in kind of calligraphic writing that said "Friends Forever." Collision, you need to come up with one now too.
Well, I think, I would go sort of medical tattoo style. I want to be more useful based than just sort of body decorative.
Oh, so like the people who get their blood type.
Yeah, exactly. So if I can speak as delicately as Anne Bishop would write, beneath my navel in careful script was inscribed the legend, "Please do not put an obedience ring here," with an arrow pointed downward.
So what you're describing is kind of like a inverted tramp stamp.
Yeah.
Okay. Or like one of those shirts that says like The party's here with an arrow pointing down. I got it.
Exactly. So sort of a frontwise tramp stamp, if you will.
Okay. Well, that was my big question. I think you both passed the test.
With gleaming dark colors.
I failed miserably.
You might say that we've done so well that we're all at the bottom of the class, which in this topsy-turvy world is actually good. Are your minds blown yet?
It's the opposite of the head. Weird. Okay, go to the toe of the class.
It's like the whole thing is like the Garth Marenghi thing where he introduces and says, I hope you're all sitting uncomfortably.
There cannot be enough Garth Marenghi references because this book conjures up the same vibes, like for sure, like right down to the I've known writers who use subtext. They were all cowards. On that note, let's go ahead and take one more break, and then we're going to come back and talk about things that aren't this book. So we will be right back. Welcome back. We are through. We're done with Anne Bishop's Daughter of the Jewels, the first in the blood of the jewels, or the whatever, the jewels. And when I say done, I mean dunzo, because I am never picking up one of these things again. But now it's time for us to raise your spirits by recommending some things that are not this book. And I guess I'll go ahead and go first. I'm going to recommend a piece of music that just came out that is one of the most peaceful and soft and just wonderful things I've heard in a long time. It's by a Icelandic composer whose name I hope I don't mispronounce, Ólafur Arnalds. Just put out a record called Remember. He's a pianist. He plays a lot of kind of that stuff that... don't make that stupid laugh. Pianist. He plays the piano. Stop it. Either way, he does the stuff that exists in that world between like modern classical and ambient, and so there's a lot of kind of like I'd say electronic treatments of like close mic'd, hushed piano. It's very peaceful. It'll make you feel very calm inside. It's a good counterpoint for when you've just finished reading something horrifying. So yeah, Remember by Ólafur Arnalds, and I hope I'm getting that pronunciation. I hope I'm getting that pronunciation right, unlike the word pronunciation. Collision, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'm going to do a sexy twofer recommendation. If you'd like a very female-centric view of some political court-style intrigue, I just saw Marie Antoinette, and I recommend it extremely highly. I know Sofia Coppola comes in for a lot of criticism. I think the bulk of that criticism is horseshit, and I think if you think that movie does not have a great deal of plot or a great deal of character development, that you were in fact busy composing screeds on Twitter and not actually watching the movie. Because there is, in fact, quite a lot of plot and quite a lot of character development, and there's just a lot of other stuff too. And it's just an overwhelming visual experience, which I like. And yet another terrific performance from Kirsten Dunst, who I just respect more every day.
Whoa, okay, weird. She was in Interview with the Vampire.
She was.
That's like, you brought it full circle, man.
Well, the circle continues to turn because this...
Will it remain unbroken?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wheel in the sky, keep turning. That's my classic rock reference for the day. The second thing I'm going to recommend is an article that made the rounds last week called Are Baths Too Hot for Testicles?
Oh, I have opinions on this.
I promise you should read this article. I know it doesn't sound promising, but it is one of the funniest things I have read. And after you've read it, I encourage you to at me about it because I have theories.
I like that
about where it came from.
You thought this is... So you think it's unusual behavior? I'm just asking because I have opinions on this. My ex used to get into the bath by hands and knees and then gently lower his testicles by hand so he could gently acclimatize his testicles to the hot water, which I found adorable. But I thought most men did this, and I'm learning through this article that that's not the case.
I have never done this in my life. I have never heard of this article until this moment. So this is all just coming as just a shocking new world to me. It's nothing I've ever considered.
Hands and knees, so chest down?
No, so you get on your hands and knees. So your hands and knees and feet warm up first, right? But your balls, you have to lower them gently because you know what balls do when they change temperature? They change size very rapidly, obviously. I don't want to woman-splain balls, but, you know.
Yeah. No, that is correct.
No, I need the information because I didn't want to tell you about why the rats ate my balls.
Have you been shaved?
Spoke so clearly to me, but guys, the rats ate my balls.
Welcome to the Angel Fire web ring. If you click here, you can go to Mr. T ate my balls. No, I have never heard of anyone doing this personally in my life. I've always just gotten in the bath like I would get into any other body of water, which is, feet first and then you submerge yourself.
We should admit that we actually met on the internet a few years ago because I ran fuckyeahratsatemyballs.tumblr.com and Jay ran fucknoratsatemyballs.tumblr.com.
And a beautiful friendship was born.
Yeah, it started off as a heated rivalry.
Exactly.
For sure, but eventually we came around.
We realized we were two sinister sides of the same ebon coin.
So, Joe, what do you have to recommend?
I'm really glad that you mentioned the testicles being lowered into the water thing and then tying that into shaving, because actually that brings me nicely round to my recommendation. So one of the things that bothered me about Daughter of the Blood is there's a point wherein Janelle, aka Witch, aka the 7-year-old girl that becomes Sen 17, she is taught by Satan how to castrate men. And I thought the reason they were sort of setting this up was because she was going to take her revenge out on the uncles that raped her at Briarwood by castrating them all. But that doesn't happen, disappointingly. So my recommendation is the book that I originally suggested that we cover for this episode. It's The Wizard's First Rule by Terry Goodkind. And there is a scene wherein one of the main female characters uses magic to manipulate a pedophile into cutting off and eating his own testicles. So, feminism.
That is awesome. What's the quote? There's the quote from the author that you've mentioned before.
Oh, yeah.
Something
and of
about
course
wanting to write horror that strikes at the base of a man's penis.
Yeah. Angela Carter, who is just a brilliant writer and does everything well that this book does badly, was once asked, possibly apocryphally, but was once asked by a college professor in front of a class, like, what the aim of her work was. And she said, my work aims to drive like a knife at the base of a man's penis.
Wow.
That's really good stuff.
Yeah. I'm just going to go ahead and give that a supplemental recommendation. If you like, she has a series of sort of dark feminist retellings of fairy tales.
Oh, cool. So like Thomas Ligotti, but less boring.
Yeah, yeah.
By the way, I love Ligotti. That book sucks. Anyway.
Her take on Bluebeard kind of stuck with me.
I can only imagine. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it does well everything that this book does extraordinarily badly.
Okay, so I understand we have some letters.
A, letter B, letter C, letter D, letter E, letter F, letter G, letter. Got a lot of letters.
All right, so normally, we don't announce books ahead of time. And we didn't announce this book ahead of time, but as I mentioned previously, The Rats Eating the Balls was enough for many people to know and recognize this book instantly. And so we got some feedback about it.
We did. So this is from Dorothy, fake last name, and is just entitled Daughter of the Blood. Hi, guys. Longtime listener, etc. here, but I had to reach out and screech after you posted the balls excerpt on Twitter. Because that line...
The balls excerpt. It sounds like one of those like famous documents that gets leaked, like, you know, the Star Report,
or like the worst Robert Ludlum book ever.
The Born Supremacy, the Balls excerpt.
That line burned itself into my wee teenage mind lo these many years ago. You see, as a lonely nerd with no game or interest in realistic human interactions whatsoever, these edgiest of edgy, dark, erotic fantasy novels were my excuse to read about everything I wasn't read for, but drenched in blood. Sorry, capital B blood. And therefore, definitely not porn. As reprehensible as they are in many particulars, the over-the-top aspects move them in the direction of camp for me, and all 3 tattered volumes of the main trilogy do still occupy a space on my shelf. Between Anne Bishop and Anne Rice, my developing brain was well and truly marinated in trash and hormones. Happy reading.
And frilly shirts, I'm sure.
So that like definitely had a lot of things click, right? Like it paints in primary colors, mostly black and red. And so does everything that I was reading when I was 14. So
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, I was reading Stephen King at the time, and there's not much more literary value to that than there is to this. So. No, that's a good piece of feedback.
Yeah, like I spent a lot of time trying to figure out who this was for, and in the end, I don't think the mystery is too hard to crack. There's literally a paragraph. I have trouble finding it again, but there's literally a paragraph where it's like, I think Damon is musing on Briarwood, and he's like, she wasn't like other girls. She dreamt of unicorns and talked about friends who no one else could see. And I was like, yep. Somebody give her a horse.
Yeah.
Like,
you laugh because I'm different. Yeah. I laugh because you're all the same.
Exactly. Yeah.
I am confident if I read this book as a 14-year-old, I would have absolutely loved it.
I guess I could see that now that, like, I think about, you know, because I was definitely what I like to now refer to as an alternatine.
Yeah.
And I'd say that most of my female acquaintances at the time, definitely not girlfriends, because when I was that age, I was... once again, I think that letter said no game. I think that's pretty accurate. I would be like, hey, want to come to band practice? But yeah, most of my female acquaintances at that point in time, I think probably would have really liked this book. They were the same ones who, you know, like, you know, wore a lot of tie-dye and practiced fake magic. So, okay. So it's been wonderful, Joe, having you on the show. It's been really good getting your perspective on this, because I think if just the two of us were to sit here talking about this for as long as we have, we would now have no listeners because they would have all run screaming from the hills. And you've made things very entertaining and much, much easier to deal with. But if people want to keep up with the other stuff that you're doing, what should they check out?
Well, I suggest anyone check out my podcast that I run with my partner, Kevin Mahon, who has also been on the show. Our podcast is called How to Wrestling. It's an introductory, educational / humorous podcast about the wonderful, magical world that is pro wrestling. If you've never watched any wrestling at all, doesn't matter. If you have an interest, you can still listen to our podcast. It's for new fans and old fans alike, just to get you into the world of wrestling, educate you on who everyone is. We have a bit of fun, but we also like to teach as well. So you can find us at Twitter at How To Wrestling, and you can find me on Twitter as well. I'm at the Joanna Graham. And I suggest you follow me and my little podcast.
Yeah, How to Wrestling is incredible, and I feel like now, if you wanted to, you could do a real cool tie-in episode about like How to Gangrel or something. How to the Brood. No, but seriously, it's one of my favorite shows, and I would recommend it definitely. I know as a show, we have a lot of fans who are wrestling fans. If you're not already listening to it, you should be listening to it. We also have a lot of fans who get very baffled when I start talking about wrestling on our book podcast. And those are the people I would especially recommend the show to, because I think it's a really, really good kind of entry point into I don't know how to understand what the appeal of that bizarre little world is. You know?
Yeah, I'd not watched any wrestling before I met my partner Kevin and started the podcast, so it's from my perspective as a totally new fan to the genre, and it's kind of a little bit about how baffling the world of wrestling is. If you're not familiar, wrestling is just fucking weird. It's just strange.
No, because every wrestler, when they're born, is given a jewel, right? And the color of that jewel
It's John Cena! Oh, sorry.
If I may make a small self-indulgent wrestling reference to the book, if I may, if I was going to get anyone to direct Daughter of the Blood within the wrestling world, I would choose Vince Russo. There you go.
Oh,
that's a little reference for
sure.
the fans.
And you could definitely put Christian in one of the starring roles.
Yes.
I would say. Long-haired Christian.
Oh, yeah. Young Christian is definitely close to the model for...
Edge and Christian are Demon and Lucifer.
No, sorry. Young Edge is definitely the model that I had for Damon.
Yeah, the Brood era.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting too deep.
I did kind of want to do... Yeah, I did want to do a cast the movie for this because maybe the best thing about this is that because of its subject matter and the way it treats it, there's just no fucking way it could ever be a movie.
Yeah, no way.
Even HBO would be like, no, that's a little grimdark for us, thanks.
Plus, casting the movie for this, if we were to play that game, would essentially just be casting Interview with the Vampire, but with two more men.
Yeah.
So,
but if we did cast the movie WWE style.
Edge, Christian.
Yeah.
I don't know who you'd get for the older sexy vampire.
Vince McMahon.
All I'm coming up with...
Exactly.
Yeah. See, I kept thinking about Gangrel, but he was never sexy, so he's just kind of puffy.
Gangrel would play Greer, obviously.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Jesus.
Oh, deep pull.
You're not new to this wrestling thing anymore.
4 years in.
Okay, so everybody else, thank you so much for listening. If you want to get in touch with us and send us letters not about this book, do not send us letters about this book. I never want to hear about this book ever again. You can reach us at I don't even own a television at gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter and Facebook at IDEOTVpod. I think that's about it. As always, this is brought to everybody by Patreon. So if you want to check us out at Patreon, you can do that, patreon.com/IDEOTVpod. And, until next time, I think we can all just sit around and anticipate Joe's audiobook treatment of this whole damn trilogy.
Available now for £17.99.
That's a hell of a deal because it's more than that for just one right now. And normally we like to sign off with Ride the Crab, but to use a quote from this book and one of my favorite songs of all time, I'd like to invite you all, the listeners, to ride the wind.